Hello, human. Reflective Self here with a new episode of Living Lessons, where I get to share honest insights from lived experience. Lessons that capture moments of clarity, vulnerability, and human understanding. Today's episode is all about how self talk shapes our identity and beliefs. And so here's the lesson that I've learned: your words carry power, so speak with care. Most of us are in conversation with ourselves all day long. These conversations aren't always spoken out loud. Sometimes they are internal. They can arrive as passing thoughts, quick reactions, or self-narrated stories. Often we don't hear this dialogue clearly. It can feel like second nature, almost automatic. We tend to treat it as background noise or just the way things are. We rarely question it, and yet these small statements can carry weight, where we unconsciously shift from conversation to reduction, where the words born from our discourse become the statements that endure. Statements such as, "I'm terrible at this," "I'm not creative," "I'll leave it to people who are actually good at this." None of these need to be shouted to be believed in that single moment. They just need enough repetition over time to settle. What is so interesting, yet unsettling, is how easy it can feel for these phrases to become factual. Whether they started out as passing thoughts, jokes, or offhand conclusions masked as self-awareness. Sometimes self-talk shows up as humor, a light, self-deprecating comment, a joke we've told enough times that laughter no longer has a place to land. Sometimes it comes from something said to us once, an observation, an opinion, a comment that landed more deeply than intended. Over time, those words can shift from something we once heard to something we now carry. What I've come to find is that these shifts rarely happen in moments of certainty or clarity. They often happen in moments that we overlook, language that we dismiss or believe to be harmless, perceptions we find so small or insignificant that we don't think they are deserving of examination. Eventually, we are no longer repeating words. We start living inside them. And over time, what inhabits us eventually shapes us. Not because they are true, but because they are familiar. I have found that any change to be had does not begin with rewriting our thoughts. It begins with noticing them. Awareness doesn't arrive all at once. It can show up in quiet moments, pauses, or realizations. When we're able to catch a phrase mid-sentence and recognize it as something we've heard echoed before. And in that brief pause, noticing it for what it truly is. Not something familiar, but foreign. Noticing doesn't require judgment. It doesn't require correction right away either. It's simply the act of seeing what's already there. And sometimes, that awareness alone creates the space we need. The space between the thought and the belief. The space to ask whether this is something worth carrying forward. When self-talk does shift, it's often subtle. Not through loud affirmations or forced optimism, but through quieter, more compassionate language. Language that leaves room for learning instead of keeping us stuck with an identity we would not otherwise choose. There's a difference between saying, "I'm terrible at this," and saying, "I'm still learning." Between, I failed, and I learned something valuable. The difference isn't in positivity, it's in permission. Permission to grow, permission to be unfinished, permission to speak to ourselves with the same care we extend to those we love. Over time, these small adjustments tend to reinforce themselves. Not because we've convinced ourselves, but because our actions and behaviors begin to align with the language we are choosing. Words don't just describe our inner world, they have the power to transform it. The way we speak to ourselves can influence how we show up, how we respond to challenge, how we interpret effort and rest, success and missteps. And I would be remiss if I didn't share the following words from the legendary Bruce Lee in his 1971 television appearance on The Pierre Berton Show. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. When you put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend. In many ways, our self-talk works the same way, shaping itself to whatever story we pour it into. Speaking with care doesn't mean speaking perfectly. It means speaking consciously. It means recognizing that our inner language is not neutral. It's formative. And when our words soften, our inner world often follows, making room for beliefs that feel truer to who we are becoming. And that is the lived lesson that I've learned. It's not a universal prescription, but it is mine. Keep what stays, release what doesn't. Until next time.